The silence in the room was absolute, a thick, heavy blanket of shock. I could see Marcus's face, frozen in a rictus of horror. His tan had paled to a sickly greenish white. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. I wasn't done. I initiated the final command, the kill switch. All at once, the elegant code on the screens dissolved into a shower of digital rain, replaced by a single blinking red cursor on a black screen. System-wide crash. Ethelred was dead. The chaos was instantaneous. People were shouting. Phones were out, recording the magnificent train wreck. Marcus looked like he was going to be sick right there on the stage. My work here was done. The air in the ballroom was thick with the cloying scent of money and expensive perfume. 1,000 champagne flutes tinkled in a symphony of self-congratulation. From my vantage point in the shadowed alcove near the service entrance, I had a perfect, unobstructed view of the man of the hour, Marcus Vance, my ex-boyfriend, soaking it all in like a lizard on a hot rock. He was on stage, bathed in a spotlight that made his teeth look impossibly white and his designer suit shimmer. He was selling them a dream, a revolution in architectural software he'd christened Ethelred. The name, like everything else about the project, was my idea. He'd just been the one to steal it, package it, and slap his smirking face on the box. Ethelred is more than just a program, he purred into the microphone, his voice a rich, velvety baritone that had once whispered promises in my ear. Now it just made my stomach clench. It's a paradigm shift. It's the future of design, of creation, of architecture itself. A wave of nausea, sharp and acidic, rose in my throat. I swallowed it down, my knuckles white where I gripped the tablet in my hands. The future. He was selling them my future. My mind flashed back. A gut punch of a memory from a year ago. The cold, sterile silence of our apartment. A place that had once been my sanctuary. The neatly packed boxes of my life stacked by the door. I'd spent 3 sleepless weeks coding the foundational framework for what would become Ethelred. A breakthrough I was so excited to show him. He'd looked at my screen, at the elegant, intricate lines of code, and his expression had been one of pure, unadulterated contempt. "Is this what you've been doing? Tapping away in the dark like a little gremlin?" He'd said, not even trying to hide the sneer. "It's a generative algorithm, Marcus. It can predict structural stress points in real time. It's revolutionary." My voice had been trembling with excitement. He'd laughed, a short, sharp, ugly sound. "Right. And who's going to listen to you? You can barely make eye contact with the pizza delivery guy." He gestured around the apartment at the life he paid for. "You live in my world, Eris. You need me." He'd leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper as he picked up the last of my boxes. "Face it, Aris," he'd sneered, his eyes cold and dead. "You're brilliant, but you're a ghost. You'll never find anyone better than me. No one will ever even see you." He'd been wrong about one thing. Someone was about to see me. Everyone was. Back in the ballroom, Marcus was hitting his crescendo. "And so I give you Ethelred." The crowd roared. The massive screens behind him, which had been displaying slick, animated graphics, were supposed to switch to the gleaming Ethelred logo. I smiled, a tight, grim little thing. Showtime. My thumb hovered over the glowing icon on my tablet. A little ghost I'd designed. A backdoor into my own creation. I pressed it. On stage, the screens flickered, the logo vanished. A collective gasp rippled through the ballroom as the screens were flooded with cascading lines of green text on a black background. My code. The very soul of the program. It was beautiful, complex, a digital tapestry that I had woven from nothing. Then, a new line of text appeared, stark white against the sea of green, typed out letter by letter as if by an invisible hand. Ethelred by Dr. Eris Thorne. A pause, just long enough for the name to sink in. Unauthorized use is a funny thing, isn't it? The silence in the room was absolute, a thick, heavy blanket of shock. I could see Marcus's face, frozen in a rictus of horror. His tan had paled to a sickly greenish white. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. I wasn't done. I initiated the final command, the kill switch. All at once, the elegant code on the screens dissolved into a shower of digital rain, replaced by a single, blinking red cursor on a black screen. System-wide crash. Ethelred was dead. The chaos was instantaneous. People were shouting, phones were out, recording the magnificent train wreck. Marcus looked like he was going to be sick right there on the stage. My work here was done. I turned to slip out the service door, a ghost returning to the shadows. But as I turned, my eyes were drawn to the front of the crowd, to the one person who wasn't panicking, who wasn't whispering or pointing or staring in horrified glee. Julian Croft, the CEO of the parent company, a man who was practically a myth, a reclusive billionaire known for his brutal business acumen and for firing people via text message. He stood perfectly still, his hands in the pockets of his impeccably tailored suit. He wasn't looking at the screens. He wasn't looking at the imploding Marcus Vance. He was scanning the crowd. His eyes, which I'd only ever seen in heavily filtered photos, were like chips of ice. They moved with a slow, deliberate intensity, sweeping across the panicked faces. And then they stopped. They locked right onto me. There was no way he could have known. I was in a darkened alcove 20 yards away, but he saw me and he wasn't angry. There was no fury in that gaze. There was something else, something far more terrifying. He was intrigued. A slow smile spread across his face, a barely there twitch of his lips that didn't reach his cold, calculating eyes. In that moment, I knew two things with absolute certainty. One, my life was about to get infinitely more complicated. And two, Marcus was right. I wouldn't find anyone better than him. I was about to find someone so far out of his league, he wouldn't even know what game we were playing. The summons came not in the form of a legal threat delivered by a process server, but as a single encrypted email that bypassed my spam filters and landed in my inbox with an almost audible thud. From J. Croft to A. Thorne. Subject, tomorrow, 10 a.m. my office. No salutation, no pleasantries. Just a command. I almost admired the efficiency. I spent half the night debating whether to go. The other half was spent setting up digital countermeasures, just in case my office was a euphemism for a dark room with a single light bulb and a very large man named Tiny. Julian Croft's office was the opposite of a dark room. It occupied the entire top floor of the Croft Tower, a gleaming spire of glass and steel that stabbed at the sky. The walls were glass, the floor was polished marble, and the desk was a single, massive slab of obsidian that looked like it had been carved from the heart of a volcano. The view was a panoramic sweep of the city, a god's eye perspective that made the world below seem small and insignificant. And there he was, the god himself, standing with his back to me, looking out at his kingdom. He was taller than I'd expected, with a lean, powerful build that his suit couldn't quite conceal. "Dr. Thorne," he said, his voice as crisp and cool as the air in the room. He didn't turn around. "I trust you found the place without issue." "Your email was very specific," I said, my voice coming out steadier than I felt. My hands were shoved deep into the pockets of my leather jacket. I felt underdressed, out of place, a punk rocker at the opera. I'd done it on purpose. He finally turned, and the full force of his presence hit me. He was in his late 40s, with silver threading his dark hair at the temples. His face was all sharp angles and severe lines, but his eyes were the most arresting feature. They were a pale, piercing blue, and they looked at you like you were a complex equation he was moments away from solving. "You crashed my multi-billion-dollar product launch," he stated, a matter-of-fact observation. "Technically, I crashed my multi-billion-dollar product, which your company was attempting to launch without my permission," I corrected. That tiny, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips again. "Semantics." He gestured to one of the two chairs facing his monstrous desk. "Please, sit." I remained standing. "I'm good here." He raised an eyebrow, a silent challenge. I met his gaze, refusing to back down. This was a negotiation, and the first person to get comfortable loses. "Very well," he said, moving to stand behind his desk, a king returning to his throne. "Marcus Vance has been dealt with. His contract has been terminated, and he is currently facing a litany of legal challenges from our board." "A shame," I said, my voice dripping with faux sympathy. He had such white teeth. If he caught the sarcasm, he didn't show it. He was a liability, a charismatic frontman with no substance, a common and ultimately fatal flaw in this business. He steepled his fingers, his gaze intense. You, on the other hand, are all substance. You have no charisma whatsoever. Thanks, I think. It was a compliment, Dr. Thorne. Charisma is a distraction. Brilliance is a weapon. And you, it would seem, are armed to the teeth. What do you want, Mr. Croft? I asked, cutting to the chase. I want you to come work for me, he said, as if he were offering me a cup of coffee. I want you to fix the software you so spectacularly broke. Then I want you to lead the Ethelred division. Name your price. I actually laughed. It was a short, sharp bark of a sound. You want to hire the person who just publicly humiliated your entire company? I want to hire the person who had the genius to build Ethelred and the audacity to do what you did last night. I don't reward incompetence, Dr. Thorne, but I pay handsomely for talent and nerve. You have both in abundance. This was not how I'd pictured this going. I'd expected threats, lawsuits, maybe a Black Ops team rappelling through my window, not a job offer. He was playing a different game, one with rules I didn't understand yet. Why should I trust you? I asked. You're just a more expensive version of Marcus, a suit with a bigger bank account. His expression hardened almost imperceptibly. Marcus Vance is a parasite. He feeds on the talent of others because he has none of his own. I am a predator. I hunt for talent, and when I find it, I give it the resources it needs to flourish. Because its success becomes my success. Do not ever compare me to him again. The raw power in his voice sent an involuntary shiver down my spine. This man didn't just command a room, he owned the very air in it. I weighed my options. I could walk away, sell the code to a competitor, and spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. Or I could step into the lion's den. My life had been a series of quiet, lonely rooms. Maybe it was time for a change of scenery. All right, I said, my voice quiet but firm. I'll do it. He nodded, a flicker of satisfaction in his eyes. My assistant will draw up a contract. Your salary will be... I have a condition, I interrupted. He paused, his hand hovering over his desk intercom. I'm listening. I took a deep breath. This was it. The moment I either became a player or went back to being a ghost. I don't want a salary, I said. I want a controlling stake in the Ethelred patent. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the city outside seemed to hold its breath. I expected him to laugh, to call security, to have me physically thrown out of his glass tower. The demand was beyond audacious. It was insane. Julian Croft stared at me, his face an unreadable mask. The seconds stretched into an eternity. Then, to my utter astonishment, he leaned back in his chair and a slow, genuine smile spread across his face. It transformed him, softening the severe lines and making him look almost human. Dr. Thorne, he said, a note of something that sounded suspiciously like admiration in his voice. I do believe this is the beginning of a very interesting partnership. Stepping into the Ethelred division at Croft Enterprises was like entering a different universe. The offices were a sprawling, open-plan wonderland of gleaming tech, whiteboard walls covered in complex algorithms, and the constant low hum of powerful servers. My old workspace had been a cramped corner of my bedroom. This was like being handed the keys to the Starship Enterprise. The team of engineers, a collection of brilliant misfits and coding prodigies that Marcus had barely bothered to learn the names of, were initially wary of me. I was the boogeyman, the ghost who had brought their project crashing down. I didn't try to win them over with speeches or team-building exercises. I just rolled up my sleeves, pulled up a chair to a terminal, and started to code. I dove into the wreckage of Ethelred, showing them the back doors, the hidden kill switches, and the elegant load-bearing structures that I had woven into its DNA. I answered their questions, debated their theories, and treated their ideas with the respect they deserved. Within a week, the suspicion in their eyes was replaced by respect. Within 2, it was something bordering on reverence. They had been working on a project they thought they understood, only to have the architect herself show them the hidden rooms and secret passages they never knew existed. My relationship with Julian Croft evolved into a strange, exhilarating dance. He wasn't a hands-on manager, he was more of a silent partner, a watchful presence. He'd appear in the lab at odd hours, a cup of coffee in his hand, and just watch. He wouldn't say anything, just observe the flow of information, the spark of ideas, the rhythm of the team. Our work sessions became the highlight of my day. They would start in his office with me outlining our progress on a massive smartboard and inevitably devolve into intense, wide-ranging debates. We argued about everything from the ethics of AI to the merits of brutalist architecture. He was fiercely intelligent, with a mind that cut through bullshit like a laser. He challenged my assumptions, pushed my thinking, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I had met my intellectual match. "You're too cautious with the predictive modeling," he said one evening, gesturing at a complex flowchart I'd created. We were the only two people left on the entire floor, the city lights twinkling like a fallen constellation outside the glass walls. "It's not cautious, it's responsible," I countered, pointing to a specific data point. "If we allow the AI to make autonomous structural decisions without a human failsafe, we're opening ourselves up to a catastrophic error. Think of the Tacoma Narrows Bridge, but on a digital, global scale." "Or," he said, stepping closer, his presence filling the space between us, "we're pioneering a system that could prevent catastrophic errors before a human could even spot them. You can't innovate if you're afraid to fail." "I'm not afraid to fail," I shot back, my heart beating a little faster. He was standing so close I could smell the faint, clean scent of his cologne. "I just have a healthy respect for the laws of physics and a deep-seated distrust of anything that thinks it's smarter than me." He chuckled, a low, rumbling sound. "And does Ethelred think it's smarter than you?" "It wouldn't dare." The corner of his mouth quirked up. "Good." The air between us crackled with an unspoken energy. It was more than just intellectual sparring. There was a current of attraction, a magnetic pull that was getting harder and harder to ignore. I saw a different side of Julian in those late-night sessions. A man who was burdened by the weight of his empire, but who found a genuine, almost boyish delight in the purity of a complex problem. And I realized, with a jolt, that I was starting to fall for my boss. The reclusive, ruthless, ridiculously brilliant Julian Croft. It was a terrifying and thrilling thought. Just as I was beginning to feel like I'd finally found my place, the past came roaring back. Marcus, it turned out, was not content to fade into obscurity. He was a snake, and snakes always bite back. It started with a whisper campaign, anonymous posts on tech forums questioning the real story behind the Ethelred launch. Then came the articles on sleazy gossip blogs. The Vengeful X. Did Eris Thorne sleep her way to the top? They were filled with fabricated quotes and carefully doctored photos from my old social media accounts, making me look like a party girl, a social climber. "Don't read that trash," Julian said, his voice tight with anger as he walked into my office to find me staring at a particularly vile article. "It's hard to ignore when it's the first thing that pops up when you Google my name," I said, my voice flat. "It's the desperate flailing of a drowning man. He has no power, no credibility. No one of any importance will believe this." But people did. Or at least, they started to have doubts. I saw it in the hesitant glances from board members in the elevator, heard it in the sudden silence when I walked into the company cafeteria. The narrative was simple and insidious. I was the woman scorned, who used her sexuality to manipulate a powerful man and steal a company. Then Marcus escalated. He released a video. It was heavily edited, a Frankenstein's monster stitched together from old clips he must have saved from our time together. There was a snippet of me, laughing at a party, then a clip of me looking tired and stressed, followed by a voiceover, my voice pieced together from dozens of different conversations. "I'll do whatever it takes. I can be very persuasive. He won't know what hit him." It was presented as a confession, a smoking gun. The video went viral. The board called an emergency meeting. The true gut punch, however, came in a far quieter, more insidious form, a ghost in my machine. It started with minor glitches in the Ethelred beta. A rendering error here, a data lag there. Small things, easily dismissed as bugs in the system. But I knew my code. It was clean, elegant, seamless. These errors felt wrong. They were random, untraceable, like a poltergeist flitting through the servers. "We're running diagnostics around the clock," said Lena, my lead engineer, her face etched with worry. We can't find the source. The code is secure. It's like it's healing itself before we can even pinpoint the wound. The timing was impeccable. We were on the verge of closing a massive deal with an international consortium, a deal that would cement Ethelred as the undisputed industry standard. These glitches were just small enough to create doubt, to make us look incompetent. One evening, I was in the server room, running a deep-level diagnostic, when Julian found me. "Any luck?" he asked, his voice echoing in the cool, quiet space. "No," I admitted, rubbing my tired eyes. "It's like it's deliberately taunting me. It's a ghost." "Maybe the ghost is human," he said, his voice quiet. I looked up at him. The doubt was there, a tiny, almost imperceptible flicker in his blue eyes, but it was there. The rumors, the video, the perfectly timed glitches. The narrative was starting to make sense, even to him. "You think I'm doing this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The accusation hung in the air between us, colder than the air conditioning. "The evidence is circumstantial but compelling," he said, his face unreadable. "You're the only one with the skill to create a bug this sophisticated, this untraceable." A cold fury washed over me, eclipsing the hurt. After everything, after our conversations, our debates, the connection I thought we had, he still saw me as a suspect. "You're right," I said, my voice dangerously calm as I turned back to the terminal. "I'm the only one with the skill to create it." I paused, my fingers flying across the keyboard. "And I'm the only one with the skill to catch the real ghost?" I knew then that Marcus wasn't working alone. He didn't have the technical expertise to pull this off. He had an accomplice. Someone on the inside. Someone with high-level access. And I was going to unmask them even if it was the last thing I did at Croft Enterprises. The game had changed. This wasn't just about code anymore. It was about survival. The day of the presentation dawned gray and oppressive, the sky a bruised purple over the city. It felt fitting. Today was either the day Ethelred secured its future, or the day it died a very public, very humiliating death. The consortium of international investors wasn't just a group of suits, they were kingmakers, representing billions in potential contracts. Their lead negotiator was a notoriously ruthless German industrialist named Klaus Richter, a man who was said to eat failed startups for breakfast. The presentation was being held in the main Croft Auditorium, a state-of-the-art theater with seating for 500. It was packed. The board was there, their faces a mixture of anxiety and suspicion. The press was there, salivating at the prospect of another spectacular failure. And somewhere in the back, I knew Marcus was lurking, ready to watch his masterpiece of revenge unfold. "Are you ready?" Julian asked, his voice low. He was standing beside me in the wings of the stage. He looked impeccable in a dark charcoal suit, but I could see the tension in the set of his jaw. The doubt was still there, a chasm between us. "I'm always ready," I said, my eyes fixed on the stage. My own private battlefield. I was dressed in my usual uniform, black jeans, a soft gray t-shirt, and my favorite leather jacket. I was not there to be a corporate drone. I was there to be a ghostbuster. I walked onto the stage to a smattering of polite, if hesitant, applause. The massive screen behind me lit up with the Ethelred interface. I took a deep breath, my fingers finding the wireless keyboard and mouse on the lectern. "Good morning," I began, my voice clear and steady, amplified by the microphone. "My name is Dr. Eris Thorne. I'm the architect of Ethelred. What you're about to see is not just a software demonstration. It's a glimpse into the future of intelligent design." I started the demo. For the first 10 minutes, everything was flawless. I walked them through the generative design features, the real-time stress analysis, the seamless integration with global supply chains. The investors were leaning forward, their expressions shifting from skepticism to genuine interest. Even Richter looked impressed. Then it happened. The ghost made its appearance. It started subtly. A texture rendering on a 3D model flickered and pixelated. I corrected it manually, improvising a comment about beta testing. A few moments later, a crucial calculation for structural load capacity began to lag, the numbers spinning endlessly. I could feel the mood in the room shift. The investors were murmuring to each other. The board members were shifting uncomfortably in their seats. I glanced into the wings and saw Julian, his face a mask of stone. In the back of the room, I caught a glimpse of Marcus's smug, triumphant smile. This was it, the main event. The ghost was getting bolder, preparing for the kill shot. Instead of fighting it, instead of trying to patch the holes as they appeared, I did the one thing no one expected. I let it happen. I stepped away from the lectern. The system went into full-blown meltdown. Models corrupted, data streams flatlined, and the entire interface dissolved into a chaotic mess of glitched graphics and error messages. A wave of panicked whispers swept through the auditorium. Klaus Richter stood up, his face a thundercloud. "Oh, Dr. Thorne!" he boomed, his German accent thick and sharp. "What is the meaning of this? Is this some kind of joke?" I walked to the center of the stage, my hands in my pockets. "No joke, Mr. Richter," I said, my voice calm and conversational. "What you are witnessing is not a flaw. It's a security feature." The room fell silent. Even Richter seemed taken aback. "A security feature?" he scoffed. "It looks like a catastrophic failure." "Exactly," I said with a smile. "It's designed to look that way. You see, for the past few weeks, Ethelred has been haunted. A ghost in the machine, a saboteur attempting to undermine our work. But this ghost left footprints. Very faint, very clever footprints, but I found them." I turned to the corrupted screen. I couldn't remove the malicious code without tipping off the saboteur. So I built a cage around it. A digital tripwire. The moment the saboteur initiated the main attack, which they did just moments ago, they wouldn't just crash the system, they would trap themselves inside it. My fingers flew across the keyboard at the lectern. A new window opened on the screen, a command line interface. I typed in a string of code. The malicious code was designed to route through a series of anonymous proxies, a ghost network, I explained, my voice echoing in the silent room. But every ghost has a source. Every network has a point of origin. A map of the Croft Enterprise's internal network appeared on the screen. A pulsating red line snaked its way through the digital labyrinth, a trace route moving in real time. The attack was triggered from inside this very building, I continued. The red line homed in on a specific floor, a specific section, a specific office, and the signal originates right there. The screen zoomed in, displaying an office number and a name. Harrison Clark, senior board member. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Harrison Clark, a portly, balding man in the front row, went white as a sheet. He started to stand up, to protest, but it was too late. "But he didn't act alone," I said, my voice like ice. "The malware itself was crude, but effective. It had all the hallmarks of a narcissist with a grudge and a rudimentary knowledge of SQL injection." I typed another command. A new window popped up, displaying the source IP address of the user who had uploaded the malicious code to Clark's system. It was an address registered to a private, encrypted network. A network I recognize. One last command. The system cross-referenced the IP with my own private database, compiled from the digital detritus of my past life. A photo appeared on the screen. It was Marcus. A smug selfie, taken at a coffee shop just 2 blocks from the Croft Tower, time-stamped less than an hour ago. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. All hell broke loose. Security was on Clark before he could take 2 steps. Marcus was trying to bolt for the exit, but the press, smelling blood, swarmed him like sharks. In the midst of the chaos, Julian walked onto the stage. He didn't look at the pandemonium in the auditorium. He looked at me. The doubt was gone, replaced by a look of sheer, unadulterated awe. He took the microphone from the lectern. His voice, calm and powerful, cut through the noise. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his eyes never leaving mine, "you have just witnessed the brilliance of Dr. Eris Thorne, a woman who not only builds the future, but who defends it with an integrity and courage I have never before encountered." He walked towards me, his steps slow and deliberate. The room quieted, all eyes on us. "The world knows me as a businessman," he said, his voice softening. "A man who deals in numbers and contracts. But for the past few months, I have had the privilege of knowing the woman behind the genius. The woman who is fierce and loyal, who is unafraid to challenge the world, and who has, in a very short amount of time, completely re-architected my own. My heart was hammering against my ribs. This was not happening. This was not real. He stopped in front of me, and then Julian Croft, the reclusive billionaire, the ruthless predator of the corporate world, got down on one knee. The silence in the room was so profound I could hear my own pulse roaring in my ears. "Dr. Thorne," he said, his voice clear and unwavering, his piercing blue eyes full of a raw, breathtaking emotion. "Aris, you are the most extraordinary person I have ever met. I have no intention of letting you go. Will you marry me?" 1,000 thoughts screamed through my head. The audacity, the timing, the sheer beautiful insanity of it all, here now, in the wreckage of his company's near disaster, in front of the entire world. I looked down at this powerful, brilliant, impossible man kneeling at my feet. A slow smile spread across my face. I took the microphone from his hand. "Mr. Croft," I said, my voice laced with a humor only he would understand. "I'll consider it, pending a successful acquisition." The room, after a beat of stunned silence, exploded. Not with gasps, but with laughter and thunderous applause. Klaus Richter was beaming, clapping his hands together like a delighted child. Julian looked up at me, his face breaking into a wide, genuine grin. In that moment, standing on that stage, with the man I loved kneeling before me and the future stretching out like an open road, I finally understood. I wasn't a ghost anymore. I was the one doing the haunting. The acquisition, as it turned out, was a resounding success. Our little stunt at the presentation became the stuff of legend in the tech world. The Ghostbuster Gambit, one magazine called it. Klaus Richter not only signed the deal but doubled the initial offer, citing unparalleled confidence in senior management's creative problem solving. The story of the proposal went viral, a modern corporate fairy tale. CEO proposes to genius coder after she saves company. It was cheesy, it was dramatic, and the world absolutely ate it up. Harrison Clark and Marcus Vance were buried under an avalanche of federal charges. Corporate espionage, wire fraud, conspiracy? The list went on. They were a footnote, a cautionary tale about what happens when you underestimate the quiet girl in the corner office. And the wedding? It was the exact opposite of the gala where this whole insane story began. There were no crowds, no spotlights, no champagne flutes. We were married a year later in the quiet, hallowed halls of the city's grandest public library. The guest list was small, my loyal team of engineers, Julian's fiercely protective personal assistant, and a handful of close friends. Our vows were unconventional. Julian promised to always respect my need for a private server and never question my caffeine intake. I promised to try and explain my code in metaphors he could understand and to never, ever use my skills to hack his smart fridge, no matter how tempted I was. Life with Julian was a constant, thrilling surprise. He was my partner in every sense of the word. He was the only person whose intellect challenged my own, whose ambition matched my drive. But he was also the man who would bring me a cup of tea, exactly how I liked it, when I was lost in a labyrinth of code at 3 a.m. He was the man who would listen for hours as I excitedly explained a new algorithm. His eyes alight with genuine fascination. He saw me, all of me. The brilliant, the awkward, the fierce, the vulnerable. Our home office became the new center of our universe. It was a perfect blend of our two worlds. One side was sleek and minimalist with a single imposing desk and a wall of monitors displaying global market data. The other side was a controlled chaos of whiteboards, tangled cables, and half-disassembled hardware, my creative sanctuary. One rainy afternoon, about a year after the wedding, I was sketching out a new idea on one of the whiteboards. It was the seed of our next big project, a philanthropic foundation dedicated to funding and mentoring young women in STEM fields, a way to ensure that other brilliant ghosts got their chance to be seen. The door opened and Julian walked in, 2 mugs in his hands. He set one down on my desk. The steam rising from it smelled of dark roast and hazelnut. My favorite. He came to stand beside me, his arm wrapping around my waist as he looked at the complex diagrams and equations I'd been scrawling. "What's this?" he asked, his chin resting on my shoulder. "The framework for the foundation," I said, leaning back against him. I'm calling it Project Athena. We find the girls who are building worlds in their bedrooms and basements, the ones no one is paying attention to, and we give them the resources to build empires. He was quiet for a moment, studying the board. It's brilliant, he said, his voice soft. It's perfect. He kissed the top of my head. How did I ever run a company without you? Poorly, I deadpanned, taking a sip of my coffee. He chuckled, the sound vibrating through me. You're not wrong. We stood there for a long time, in the quiet of our office, the rain pattering against the glass walls of our home. His arm was a warm, solid weight around me. Outside, the world bustled on, a complex system of moving parts, but in here I was home. I thought back to Marcus, to his sneering, confident dismissal of me all that time ago. You'll never find anyone better. He was right, in a way. I hadn't just found someone better. I'd found the best. Not just the best man, but the best partner, the best friend, the best champion. And in doing so, I had finally, truly, become the best version of myself. I was Dr. Eris Thorne Croft, co-CEO, lead architect and wife. I wasn't in anyone's shadow. I was standing in the full, glorious light, right where I belonged. And our story, I knew, was just getting started.